Hi everybody, this is Oksana. In this video we're going to be making this magical amulet talisman kind of pendant, and it has a little labradorite there on the bottom, and it is a little bit more complicated. I wouldn't probably recommend this to a beginner. I know it doesn't look super complicated, but it ends up being a little complicated trapping this stone in, as well as there's a lot of different gauges of wire used here. And so I would say this is probably an intermediate to advanced piece. So if you want to see how I made this, let's get started. So I have some really thick wire here. It is 14 gauge copper. It is dead soft, but you're gonna find it hard to bend just because of how thick this wire is. And this particular spool I bought from Monster Slayer. I know everything, I always say Rio Grande, but this is really old. I bought it before I knew about Rio Grande. All right, so I'm gonna cut myself about 8 inches. So now we want to get this shape of our talisman, and mine is going to be round. So I just looked around and I found a round object, which is this Eco Tools brush, makeup brush. It has a pretty nice size circle here, but it doesn't have to be round. It could be, you know, like an oval or, you know, something else. So I'm gonna bend that wire around until I get that nice shape. And your object does not have to be the same size as mine, but I'll just measure it so you have an idea of how big mine is. It's like an inch. It's like an inch across. So in the diameter. So now we have this. And what I want to do is I want to make like a little loop here and then another loop up here with the other wire. So I'm going to cut this first wire just a little bit there now that I know how big my circle is going to be. And then I like to use the bail making pliers, but you can use round nose pliers as well. So I'm going to use this size here, which is not the smallest size, but the one next to it. So I'm going to grab, and I'm just going to turn and try to make a nice little loop, which is easier said than done because this wire, oh, I grabbed it with the wrong end. This wire is really hard to bend. All right, so there we go. And then with the other wire, so I am gonna trim it a little bit because this is like really long. I do want a bigger loop up top because that's gonna be my bail. So I'm gonna go for this one. I think that's the fourth one. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Oh, you know what? Let me fix. All right. And if these did not line up for you, you can, you know, widen your circle or make it a little smaller depending on which way they need to go. You could also say this is like way over here. You can, you know, just cut more wire and keep going with the circle. But basically, this is what our frame is going to look like. And what I'm going to do, and this is optional because the wire is really strong on its own as it is, but if you wanted to give it some texture, you could hammer it. So I have an iron block and I have a chasing hammer. The iron block I got from Michael's years ago, and the chasing hammer I ordered on Amazon. So the first step is I'm just going to hammer it just like this. off camera so it's not too loud, and also because I have to put it down on the ground with this flat side here, and then I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so step one of hammering is done, and that is to hammer it flat. There is going to be a step two, but before I do that, I just want to try and fix this. See how instead of curving around, this little end of it kind of just like goes straight, and it doesn't quite look as perfect. I don't know if I can fix this because it might be too difficult to bend. So I'm just gonna try using my round nose pliers. I don't know if that made it better, but the next step is now I'm gonna hammer it instead of with this flat side with this rounded side, and that's gonna give it nice texture. Again, totally optional, but I do like the way that it looks. All right, so because the wire is so nice and thick, the beautiful texture really comes through. Now, as you can see, it got a little bit discombobulated there, which is what happens a lot of times when you are hammering. So I just have to put it back. So this needs to go a little back because it started kind of going forward there. And then I'm just gonna bring this circle together like that, and you can close up these loops if you want, because sometimes they get a little bit more opened when you hammer, but they don't have to be closed, so that part is up to you if you want that little space there how it is, or if you want them to be like really tightly closed. So here we go. Next, I'm gonna take a piece of 16 gauge half round wire. This is dead soft. And you really just need, oh, I got all messed up, but you really just need like a couple of inches. There we go. I just wanted to put it back through its like little hole there, because all we're doing with this little piece is making a connection here where these two circles meet up. That's where we want to make the connection. And I'm just putting it in one circle and kind of out the other. You can use thinner wire if you only have 18 gauge, for example, but I just like the way it looks with the thick wire. It's kind of a cool look. So I've brought that through, and then here it is coming out the front. And the way that I want to cut this is to give myself like the tiniest little end, because I want that end to not be visible from the front, but also not be visible from the back. I want it to get situated right here on the bottom. So as I kind of turn this wire to wrap it around, the little end is under here and it's hidden. And then here on the back, you can't see it as well, because this is like a really thick wire and it will be kind of pokey if you let the end of it stick out. So I'm just giving it another wrap, and I'm just pressing down on it. It almost looks like stitches because of how thick these little wraps are. And then here is my wire. So after I wrapped around both there, I'm just bringing here on the side of my little circle, my little loop, and I'm just doing the same thing where I'm wrapping it around. So this is the back of my piece, and I'm just trimming it again very short so that the little wire end ends up being under here and not noticeable. All right, and then you can see how it looks from the front. So now it's connected, and this is not going to move anywhere. All right, now I'm going to be working with some slightly thicker half round wire, and this is 14 gauge. And the reason is my stone Here's my stone. It is a little round labradorite and it is 10 millimeters in size. So due to its size, it would really be better to hold it with some slightly thicker wire, not the thin wire that, or not that it's that thin, but not the wire that we use to make the connections with. So I'm moving up a gauge here and I'm getting myself an 8-inch piece of this thicker half round wire. And it's from Rio Grande, this 14 gauge half round wire. So what we're gonna do with this piece is we're gonna bend it kind of roughly in half. And we're trying to make a nice curve here, but we're trying to keep this wire positioned rounded side up, flat side down. And if you're having trouble, if it starts to just kind of bend on you, if you take a piece of fabric so you don't scratch your wire, you can kind of just press on it through the fabric, or without the fabric, but it might leave like little marks on it, to try and straighten it out so that it doesn't, you know, curve for you out of place, like so it doesn't twist sideways, so it stays this rounded portion up. So as I bend, I want to see how that works with my stone there. All right, so I don't want my stone to be able to pop through. I want it to be small enough, a small enough little window, but also there we go. That should be good, but also I want this to go to the back. So I'm gonna grab like this and bend these wires backwards there. And then here with your fingers, you just want to bend them. And if they start to get twisted up, you can just fix it with your pliers, but you just want to bend them so they come together. There we go. Just bringing those together like that, because I want to connect them. And so to be able to connect them, we need them right up against each other. So you can check your stone again. That's a perfect little window for my stone there. All right, so now we're gonna use even more half round wire and in another gauge. Sorry about that, but unfortunately this design really requires lots of different types of wires, but this is 22 gauge half round. It's the nice thin wire that we use a lot to make our connections. So I'm just gonna cut myself off a piece, maybe like 5 inches or so. And then here, where we made our wires come together, we're just gonna wrap it around and make that nice connection. And I'm just gonna squish that down with my pliers. And when you get to the end of your wire, you just want to make sure that the little wire end is on the inside there. Not here on the outside, but in there. And so same thing here. Just gonna trim that. So I'm just gonna trim that so that the little wire end is here on the inside. And I'm just gonna squish that down. So now when we take our little lab and we put it in the little window, and we take this and bend it around our little lab there, here is the result. Just gonna turn my stone so that the color of it shows. And what you can do is you have that in there. And you can also kind of use your pliers to help bend that frame around your stone. So now you want to grab another little piece of the 22 gauge half round wire. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach this. So if you pressed down on this wire like this, you kind of bent it down over your stone, and your stone might be actually pretty trapped in, like mine is. We are not going to rely on that. We're going to trap it in more. But the reason I say that is you're going to see me working with this and you're going to be like, wow, why is her stone not falling out? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half round wire right around the bottom here, and I'm just going to give it a few wraps. So like 3 should be adequate. What I want to do now is I want to put it through. Just try to like push your stone up, or if you need to, you can just push this up to try and get a little gap under there so you can squeeze your wire in there. But once you do that, you can pull that through. And we're just going to be attaching these 2 wires together here on the bottom. So I'm going to put it through again. And I'm going to do that 2 more times. I want it to look like there's like three little wraps on the bottom there. All right, so that's 2. Actually, that came out a little crooked. So I'm just gonna adjust. There we go. Ooh, my stone fell out. That's okay. I'm gonna pop it back in a sec. All right, so 3. So we have 3 wraps, 3 wraps. Just squeeze it tightly together. And then, oh, actually, because I have to bring this down, it's gonna look like 4 little wraps on the bottom there. And now I'm gonna wrap around just here. So I'm gonna do this 3 times so it matches the other side. So 1, 2. My wire is getting twisted. Oops. Since it's half round, you want to just make sure it stays the half round side up. All right, and now I just want the little wire ends to be kind of on the bottom there, on like the edge, so they don't stick out. So they don't stick out the front or the back. So I'm just going to press down on those little wire ends after I've trimmed that. All right, and I'm just going to squish everything together this way. Perfect, and I'm just making sure that this is nice and centered on the bottom there, which I don't think it is. I think it needs to go just a smidge to the left. All right, so now we're just gonna pop the stone back in. Remember, this back side is not connected, so you can lift it up to get this stone in there, like that. And once your stone is in there, do kind of press it down. Now it's still could pop out, but this next step is where we're going to secure it. We're going to take these wires here and we're going to wrap them upwards, and we're going to put them on the edge of our stone there. Like that. All right, so at this point we're going to need more of this 22 gauge wire. Kind of a longish piece here. I'll just cut off a piece and then I'll just measure how long it is. I just always eyeball everything, but let me see. So it is like 8 inches. And here's what we're going to do. This is going to be for securing the stone. So here is our stone here on the bottom, and then on the back it can kind of slip out the sides here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half round wire and I am going to work it through under here like this until I get to about the middle of it. And then I'm going to put it through this little hole, I guess, little gap on each side so that I can bring it to the front. And so this is what our back is going to look like. And then here on the front, I'm going to take the half round wire and I'm going to put it, usually there's a little gap you can work it in to, like at least towards the bottom. So find a little space that you can work it into so that you can wrap it around. There we go. So that's one wrap. I'm gonna try and get 3 there. All right, 2, and let's do one more. There we go, 3. Let's see if I can get in here to squish that down. All right, so with the end of this wire, we just want it to be here in the back, but we want it to be short, maybe even shorter than that, because we don't want it to stick out the side or be visible. So then once you cut it, just press it down in there. And then here on the front, I'm just gonna press down on that, and it looks like this. You have these 3 little wraps. All right, so I also just realized mine's a little bit crooked, like the little bend is higher here than it is here. I'm gonna see if I can press down on it a little bit just to make it look slightly better instead of really crooked. All right, so now just the same exact thing on the other side. Just find a little gap that you can work that wire into so you can make a few wraps on this side as well. All right, this is much lower, as you can see, or higher, since we're holding it upside down compared to this side. So just gonna work on getting them a little better aligned with each other, a little more symmetrical. And of course, we're just gonna trim that off as short as we can here on the back, and then just press that little wire end down in there. All right, so here's the back, And as you can see, it's a lot more difficult for the stone to slip out now because you have this wire here trapping it from the side, and then as long as the window you made was nice and small, the stone shouldn't be able to pop through the front either. So now we just have to finish this off. So I'm just taking these wires here, and what I'm going to do is just try to kind of pull them through this way so they're not on the back. There we go. And I'm going to try and make a nice little curvature in them. Kind of like this. Let's see if I can get it even. There we go. Pretty even, I think. So once you have that, you can just start with one of them and wrap it around. And then go to the other one and wrap that around. And to finish off these wires, what we want to do is, just like we have been doing, trim them so that the little end, the little wire end, you can kind of see it peeking out there, is when we kind of curve it as if the wire was still wrapping around. It's going to be here on the edge. And just kind of curve it with your pliers so it's just right on the edge in there, so it doesn't stick out from the front or back. And just going to do the same thing on this side here. So if you want a really basic piece that just has a stone in there for decoration, then this is pretty much it, but I'm going to embellish this a little more by adding additional wires. So one way you can embellish kind of the rest of this design and fill in some of this open space is with beads. So I have some 3mm as well as 3.75mm. Here's the size of the holes. These are some copper beads from Rio Grande, riogrande.com. And the wire that I'm going to be using to put these on, you can use a round wire, but since I've been using a lot of half round, I'm just going to trim myself a pretty big piece, maybe like 10 inches or so, of 18 gauge half round. So we've got like every gauge of half round wire that I own here. And what we're going to do, because it's nice and flat, what I like about this and why I decided to use this particular wire is it's thin enough, but it's also nice and flat, so we'll be able to squeeze it in through the top there. Whereas a round wire or like a square wire, we'd probably have a much harder time with that. All right, so I had no problem getting it through the first little gap, but with the second gap, you really have to guide it because it's the way that the stone curves, and we need our wire to kind of follow along and curve as well. So that's what I'm trying to do there. There it is, it's peeking out on this side here. Just gonna grab it and pull it through until we're about, it's a little more than halfway, but that's fine, until we're about halfway. So here it is, and I'm just gonna lift that up like that. So now you want to take your beads, and the bead sizes that I showed you, they do fit nicely on this particular wire on the 18 gauge. And you just want to put them on in, you know, whatever you think looks good in terms of a pattern. You know, you can have small, large, and small again, and just kind of make a nice pattern however you want until you get to the top there. And so once you do that, take your half round wire here and twist it so that the flat side is facing you, and so the rounded side is in the back, because we're going to wrap it, and this way the rounded side will be on top and the flat side will be up against the frame that we have there. So you just want to do that maybe like twice so you have a nice strong connection. And at this point you could trim that off right on the edge there like we have been doing to hide away that little wire end, or if you want, just for kind of further embellishment and decoration, you can just kind of bend that and attach it. So I'm just going to attach it here, just for more of a decoration to fill in that space at the top even more. But it's all up to you and if you like the way that looks or not. And now we're just going to do the same thing where we trim this off right on the very, very edge. And so when I kind of curve that wire like it's going around, that little wire end is hidden there. So now just the same thing on the other side, turn it towards you so that the flat, it's easier for me to hold it upside down so that the flat side, oops, I turned it the wrong way. The flat side is facing you. And now wrap it around twice, because that's what we did on the other side. This way it matches. All right, and then after that second time, the third time is actually going to be the little curvature. And it's going to go this way. Let me just make sure it's symmetrical there. All right, so then here on the side, we just need to attach that. And this is the very last little bit. And then we will finally be done. All right, this wire isn't quite long enough, but it's still, you can still see the two little wraps, and just instead of being on that inside there, it's going to be on the side here. But it still looks the same, so it's all good. So that is it. That is this talisman, as I'm calling it, or amulet. I think it looks really cool and kind of magical, and it'll be fun to include not just copper but like some gemstone beads in here. You can add more wires. They can come like swooping down this way. You can do some weaving. If you have two wires and do like a beautiful weaving pattern, you can maybe bring it across this way and just add more to it. So this can get pretty complicated if you wanted to. And to wear it, you would just put your cord necklace, like fold it in half, like a little loop through here, and then bring it through that loop. And that's called a lark's knot. So now that you've done that, you can wear it. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.